I'm Heather Zykowski, the babe with the power, and coming up next on WAYO LP Rochester is The Sound of Tomorrow, where we're going to be talking about the dance floor. We're going to be talking about Juneteenth. We've got some stuff about drag queens, and if you're lucky and we don't run out of time, or maybe you will be lucky and we will run out of time, we might have some hot picks for you. But first...
Oh no, Heather, you look tired.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Ross.
No, I mean, you really do. Unless, is it just that you did a really bad job applying a smoky eye and that's why your under eye area looks all bruised?
No, fine. I am tired. I didn't sleep at all last night.
Oh, that's not good. What happened?
Inspiration struck, and even though I am beat, it was so worth it.
Inspiration is always worth staying up for. What were you working on? And have you picked up your ukulele again? Or are you back to dancing? Ooh, was it a breakthrough with your tarot cards, which I'm assuming you've already stopped reading since you're known for not sticking with anything for very long at all?
I am still reading my cards, and hey, my hobbies have seasons. But no to all of those. I guess I was sculpting, for lack of a better term.
Sculpting? Wow, that's a new one for you.
I know, but it turns out I have a real knack when the muses grace me. But all right, I've kept you in suspense for long enough.
Have you?
Ross, I'd like to introduce you to the new Sound of Tomorrow mascot, Mound.
What is that? What am I looking at?
Mound.
Okay, no, but what is it?
It's Mound.
Okay, you can repeat the word mound all you like. It's not helping me.
It is the name Mound, and Mound is the name of our new show mascot. Look, remember how we had all those old mic cables that didn't work anymore, but we couldn't bear to throw them out because they might come in handy for something someday?
Yeah, no, it's you who couldn't bear to throw them out with all of your weird Depression-era ways.
We're not here to talk about my depression, Ross.
Yeah, I said Depression-era.
Yeah, every era is a depression era for me. Moving on. So we had all those old cables, and it occurred to me I could twist and bend and weave the cables to create a funky little friend to help us promote the Sound of Tomorrow.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess... okay, now that I look more closely, that strange, dark, rubbery, chunky mass you keep holding up and shoving in my face does have a vaguely humanoid shape.
Okay, wait, does this help? I sewed a little outfit that might help you see better. I'm sorry, the light in my studio isn't great.
Wow. Look at that. You embroidered, I guess, a Sound of Tomorrow rocket on we're calling it an outfit and everything.
Yes, and can you see Mound's shape better now?
Yes. Yes, I see him, her, they.
They. Mound
Yep.
uses they, them pronouns. Actually, I'm sorry. I should have said that from the jump. The name
Sure.
Mound is actually because Mound's full name is Muck's Sound.
Okay, that's good. But, Heather.
Yes?
I don't know how else to say this. So, I don't, this is awkward, but am I saying that Mound appears to have just absolutely massive breasts?
Yes, dangerous curves are in. And they got the badonkadonk to match. See?
Oh my, yes. I see that now too. And you gave Mound a little hairstyle made out of the microphone cable end bit too. That's
they make
clever.
Little clacking noises when Mound dances around. See? Do you hear it?
Please stop that.
Stop what?
Stop making them dance.
Why? It's cute.
It's disturbing, Heather. You're just sitting there smiling away, making your weird rubbery, cabley, shiny, very overly curvaceous homunculus shimmy seductively at me.
That's how Mound does.
Stop it.
Mound is really going to take the show places.
We're on the radio. I'm the only one who can be made deeply uncomfortable seeing them dancing.
Everyone can hear it, though. The power of Mound.
I don't know what's wrong with you.
Yeah, me neither.
Why? I mean, do they have to be that big?
It's how the muses spoke to me.
I'm not massive chest shaming, but
That's right, body positivity.
I don't know how Mound stands up, frankly.
No, that's why I have to hold them.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. I made a Bloody Mary to get me through this. So
Oh, yum.
yeah. Hey everybody, I'm Ross Johnson, your favorite co-host.
And I'm Heather Zykowski, the babe with the power. Welcome back to the Sound of Tomorrow on WAYO LP Rochester.
We are the show of our times.
We are. It's true.
Yep.
Specifically 4 to 5 on Wednesdays.
Correct.
Oh, golly gee. What's going
Jeepers
on?
Christmas.
I don't have much going on.
Yeah, let me tell you, Heather. Me neither. You know what? Let's. I don't know what is going on. There's a lot. There's a lot going on. So the show prep lately, and by lately I mean the last like 5 years, is a lot of me like getting really distressed and angry about things through the week. Going, this is definitely what we are going to go through this, and we're going to break this down, and we're going to talk about this on the Sound tomorrow. And then by the time we do the show, I'm so like tired of it that I just am feeling like let's talk about something fun. So let's talk about, you know what, let's get this in just not even under the wire. So as we're recording this, because of course behind the scenes is, since we're not in the studio these days, we have to record a little bit early, right?
Just a little bit.
As we're recording, yesterday was actually a new federal holiday, Juneteenth.
Yes.
Today, as we're recording this, but not as you're listening to this, so this is where the system falls apart, is the holiday of Juneteenth, because Juneteenth this year fell on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So I had some, I think there are a lot of people, I think there's a lot of, is ignorance too strong a word to use about Juneteenth? For instance, I was having a conversation with some people earlier this week who did not know that Juneteenth was now a national holiday.
Oh.
Which I thought people knew, but I guess people don't know that. And I guess, you know, maybe that's on Juneteenth for not advertising itself better. I don't know.
Maybe we need more Juneteenth merch up in the Target and people will know.
Right. Absolutely. I don't know what that would be, but
I don't know either, but Target's going to be able to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think if Juneteenth does become a more highly commercialized holiday, I think we are going to have, I think we're going to have a lot of fun from year to year, because, you know, it's definitely going to be one of those holidays where people are going to try to do something and it's going to be weird and awkward and probably a little racist.
Probably bad. Yeah.
It's like did you see so Burger King Austria had a Pride celebration advertisement where you could get the special Pride burgers and the Pride. And I don't know what they were. I don't know what they were going for with this other than the obvious. So you could get a burger that was, for Pride. You could get a burger that was either two tops.
Oh God. Of like the buns?
Or two bottom buns. Yes.
For real?
There's look it up, please. It's the kind of thing that, it's one of those things that I saw and I was immediately like, oh, this is made up.
This is the Onion.
Somebody made this up. Somebody made this up. And then it was not.
Site. Wow.
It was not made up at all. So, and again, I don't know what they were going for other than the obvious, except that the obvious is like, you don't want two tops or two bottoms. That's not a party. I mean, that's not, what are you going to do with that? That's nothing. That's just, I guess we're going to the movies. Like,
That yeah. Oh boy. Wow. So Burger King Austria, they're very unclear on many things.
yes.
And they don't have anyone they could ask. Is that what
It's
I'm
one of those,
understanding?
it seems to be one of those things where it's like, with all of that stuff, whether it's a, whether it's Kwanzaa or any kind of like culturally specific holiday,
Hmm.
um, it's one of those things where you're definitely like, no, 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 you should run this by someone from that culture.
Yeah.
You should have really like run this by. It's a lot of the energy was very sort of the is it the high gay, is it um I'm forgetting Meg's name. Meg something who says hi gay. Meg Ellison. No, not Meg Ellison. That's an author. Meg somebody. Anyway, let's get back on track here. We're talking about Juneteenth. For God's sake, could you people please stop distracting me? Um, so Juneteenth. So NPR had a bit, had a little article. This is an article from John Burnett. Had this just today, actually, this morning. 4 enduring myths about Juneteenth are not based on fact. Now, I thought enduring myths was a little overstated in the sense that I think like people don't seem to know what Juneteenth is still.
Yeah, I was
So
going to say enduring with whom, because I think
yeah,
there is quite a bit of, as you said, ignorance about Juneteenth, and so I'm not
yeah. So
sure. I'm not sure there's enough of a level of awareness sometimes on folks' parts that they could have any enduring myths that would
uh,
endure from
ex-
anywhere.
exactly. So the quick NPR article aside, the quick synopsis of Juneteenth that I will try to give is this is a now federal holiday as of just last year, just last June. Um, President Joe Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, which was passed by Congress. There's a Juneteenth flag. So Juneteenth is the federal holiday again that in the United States that commemorates the emancipation of enslaved African Americans. Doesn't mark um, emancipation as we typically think of the timing, but it actually marks the anniversary of the announcement of a group of enslaved people in Texas who had been kept in enslaved conditions, despite the fact that slavery no longer legally existed in the United States. So, of course, Juneteenth, that was June 19th, 1865. And of course, that was the end of racism in the United States. So that's why we celebrate.
And I noticed that you said that there was a Juneteenth flag.
Yes,
And I
there is
would
a
like
June.
to point out that Target needs to get on putting that on T-shirts, paper cups, um,
Absolutely.
just just selling them. That's our merch angle.
Absolutely. um, it's been a holiday celebrated in various places since 1866, starting in Texas and then sort of moving around. And it's been a state holiday in an awful lot of states, and so it's nothing new. So the fact that people don't know what it is sort of sad. But anyway, okay. So these are. Would you like to hear some enduring myths about Juneteenth?
I very much would.
Again, again, if we were to do you know, this starts with number one, but if we were to do a 0.5, the enduring myth is that it's not a holiday, but it in fact is. So, myth number one is President Abraham Lincoln issued his emancipation on January 1st, 1863. And it's outrageous that it took 2.5 years for the news to finally reach enslaved people in Texas. So, this is getting into the idea that, and this was interesting. So, this is getting into the idea that, like, and this is this is a way that I've heard Juneteenth talked about. And I think a way that I kind of understood Juneteenth is that like the enslaved people like never were never given the information, like just
Mm-hmm.
never knew that anything had changed. The fact that is quoted here from historian Edward T. Cotham Jr., author of Juneteenth: The Story Behind the Celebration, is that the Emancipation Proclamation was widely covered. A lot of it with sort of an anti-abolitionist bent. So the news was out. It wasn't necessarily celebratory. It was like, can you believe what
Mm.
Abraham Lincoln did? Um, so uh, the historian says we know some slaves knew about the Emancipation Proclamation even before slave owners, but it didn't mean anything because there was no army to enforce it. So June Collins Pulliam, a fifth generation Galvestonian who had enslaved great great grandparents, who were freed by the Juneteenth order, says it wasn't that all these poor people didn't get the message. It was that there was no one enforcing it, no one making it happen, which I thought was genuinely interesting. Like I had never really thought about it that way, because you do sort of hear like, I think you do hear it in the context of like, oh, the news was kept from them and they didn't
Right.
know and they were off and, didn't. And when the truth apparently seems to be that no, they knew, there was just no one to set them there was no one to enforce the order. There was no one
Right.
enforcing the order. So there was no, I mean, I guess if you've been forcibly enslaved and someone says, "Hey, the government says you're not
Yeah.
forcibly enslaved anymore," but then you're still being forcibly enslaved, like what
Right.
is
What
that
can you do
what does
about
that
it?
do for you? You're in the exact same position you were in before.
Yeah.
So,
That is interesting because I had always thought, like, well, how would the news necessarily travel? Like, if people
right.
are forcibly enslaved, it could well be they're entirely isolated as well from
Mhm.
everyone except for their captors.
Yeah.
And how there's no internet, like, how would someone necessarily get the news?
I think I think it's one of those things that makes you sort of relook at it certainly made me relook at my perceptions, because I'm sure, again, and I could get into, I could read more about this and understand this better, and I should and I ought to. Um, so I suspect I've had this view of, like you said, like isolated, out of contact, people who've been, restricted and not able to read.
Mm-hmm.
There probably was. I mean, I'm sure these were communities. I'm sure there was communication. I'm sure there was a lot of, I'm sure there was a lot of, families communicating and news getting out and news getting back and forth. I don't think my view of was like ignorant enslaved people in a bad way, but ignorant enslaved people in that people have been kept ignorant. Um,
Yeah, that was
where
definitely my thought, that it was deliberately like not telling people and keeping them from accessing the information.
Right. Whereas that was probably harder to do than we think it was. I mean, I'm sure, just because there was no internet, I'm sure, like people talked. I'm sure there were people who were able to read. I'm sure the enslavers were talking about it. I'm sure people from other towns and trade networks and all sorts of things. I'm sure there were plenty of ways that that news could get out. Interesting. Again, one of those things that sort of made me rethink my
Yeah. All right,
um,
well done, NPR. You got us.
yeah. So I know usually these myths are like, ha ha ha, you're stupid if you didn't know this, is what I'm thinking, but um, so the preface to myth number 2 is Gordon Granger was the Union Army general who sort of went to, who sort of went around with this, what they call General Order number 3, went around Texas and basically was like, no, 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 people are free. People are free now. You can't keep. So myth number 2 is Major General Gordon Granger penned Orders number 3, the Juneteenth Order, and is credited with freeing Texas slaves. The order, which includes the powerful language "all slaves are free" and absolute equality, was actually written by Granger's staff officer, Major Frederick Emory, who hailed from an abolitionist family in Free Kansas. As a crusader against slavery in Kansas, Emory was well versed on the subject of emancipation, writes Cotham with the Juneteenth book that we talked about before. Sam Collins, the third, who is described as the unofficial ambassador of Juneteenth tourism in Galveston, says Granger is just one of the characters in the story. He's not any great hero. Matter of fact, he was no friend of the enslaved people. There are reports of Granger sending runaway slaves back to slave states. So, interesting also in the sense that, and I don't know a ton about Major General Gordon Granger anyway, but his
Mm-hmm.
is always the name at the top of sort of when you sort of look up when you get to the basics of Juneteenth, you hear about Major General Gordon Granger, again, about whom I know nothing. was the one going around spreading this proclamation. And so it sounds like he's maybe getting a little more credit than is maybe strictly deserved.
I'll go figure.
Myth number 3 also refers to General Gordon Granger, and it's that he read the Juneteenth order from a balcony to the people of Galveston, announcing that all slaves are free, quote unquote. According to Cotham, once again, General Granger never read the order publicly, nor did any member of his staff. It would have been posted around town, like at churches, particularly, places where Black people would have gathered and been able to read it. And in many cases, it was that the slave master would get. I'm not sure what the. I'm not sure how I feel about how we refer to people who hold enslaved people.
Right.
But these slave masters, I guess, would who had been thusly informed that they were no longer going to be able to hold on to their enslaved people, would have been the ones that tell them it as well. So I guess there's a common image of this Major General Gordon Granger
Right.
sort of standing at the the peak of the mountain and shouting out the the good news for all to hear, when actually it was more of a it's more of a news piece that went around.
Interesting.
Myth number 4: the Juneteenth order was basically a Texas version of the Emancipation Proclamation. That's myth number 4. The fact is, General Orders number 3 stated unequivocally that all states are free, but it also contained patronizing language intended to appease planters who didn't want to lose their workforce. 41 words of the brief 93-word order were urging enslaved people to stay put and keep working. So to quote the order, the freed are advised to remain at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. So the so I guess the idea that this is sort of busting a subset of the same myth of like the great Major General Gordon Granger, who went around, stood on the hill and shouted out this order that all people were free. Well, there was more to it than all slaves are free. It was also like, hey, don't think you can just laze around.
Yeah.
Which is a stereotype that obviously died in 1866, and we've never heard that stereotype repeated again.
Of course. Sure. It's laid to rest
Cotham,
long ago.
Absolutely. Cotham, the author of that book, which I feel like I should buy and read at this point, says many years later, the formerly enslaved remembered when the freedom paper was read to them. The slaveholder wanted to keep them working, but they didn't hear it that way. Once they heard all slaves are free, they said, "To hell with you."
I mean, which sounds perfectly reasonable to me, honestly. The whole
it sounds a little understated, actually.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But the whole okay, all right, well, nothing's gonna change.
Right.
It's just technically you're not enslaved anymore, but you still have to stay there and keep working.
You should stay
there. What the heck? Because it was so great.
Yeah, and this is the whole, this is sort of the failure of Reconstruction too. You've got people who've only ever been allowed to use their talents as enslaved people, doing labor for being forced to do free labor for other people, and then you're like, oh, you're free, but we're not gonna help you out at all. You're gonna have to figure that out yourself. It's like, so you've got and a lot of people did. I mean, a lot of people did wind up working staying on the same plantations where they had been enslaved, because again, what else do you do? It's not like, again, you're hearing no one's going to help you. It's not like suddenly a bunch of jobs opened up, other than the jobs that were being vacated by the enslaved people. So plenty of people said to hell with you, and plenty of people, I'm sure, still said to hell with you, but I guess this is where I'm going to wind up. And that's where you get, that's where we see the sharecroppers of later generations and all that stuff. So it was just telling enslaved people they were free didn't solve
Right.
It solved a part of the problem, but it didn't, it didn't address the broader concern of like, okay, what now?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when, again, and the Emancipation Proclamation, this Juneteenth, this General Order number 3, didn't solve racism either. So it didn't
Right.
make people like be. It didn't make white people suddenly, it didn't make white people who had not been, it didn't make anti-abolitionist white people suddenly open their hearts and minds and
Mm-hmm.
their,
Mm-hmm.
job prospects to formerly enslaved people. So,
Right.
um, So these are all the things you should have been thinking about 2 days ago on June because we're behind. But that's so that's that. I thought it was interesting. I thought there was actually it was a little more. I pulled it up and I was like, oh, this probably isn't going to be anything interesting. I thought it was going to be more like a fact sheet in the form of a Q&A.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it went a little deeper, which I thought was interesting.
I liked that very much. I was wondering if you would like to talk about a few more things that I think are also, what was it, long held misbeliefs?
Sure. I love busting a myth.
So, this is also from NPR, and it's from, I guess, about a week ago. And it's an article entitled Some Lawmakers Hope to Crack Down on Drag Shows Watched by Children. And I
Okay.
think we've heard about this. We've heard about suddenly in certain states, government representatives are all up in arms about drag queens corrupting children. And there's some really great, like, pull quotes I have here. Um, Florida government Ron DeSantis has suggested he could order his state's Child Protective Services Department to investigate parents who take their children to such performances. We have laws against child endangerment, DeSantis said during a news conference in Fort Myers Beach last week after a video of children attending a drag bar in Dallas surfaced. They were putting money in the underwear, and that's totally inappropriate, he said. That is not something that children should be exposed to. And then Florida State Rep Anthony Sabatini takes it even farther, proposing to terminate the parental rights of adults and make it a felony if they bring their children to watch a drag show. And Brian Slayton, a Republican state representative in Texas, is also proposing one of these bills. And he says, perverted adults are obsessed with sexualizing young children. And in Arizona, there are some Republicans quoted. This is Arizona State Senator Vince Leach says that drag is a drag on society. These performers are, in my view, disgusting. He's disturbed by newspaper photos of kindergartners stuffing bills into panties at drag performances. These kids are looking at something they'll never be able to get out of their minds. Why don't we allow kids into strip joints? We don't allow them into X-rated movies. So it's foreign to me why we allow this to go on. And the article does mention some more balanced things. There's a tweet from TV talk show host Andy Cohen who says, I'd take my kids to a drag show before taking them to a gun show. And Randy Rainbow, who's an author, tweeted, I'm introducing a bill to protect drag queens from children, which is kind of funny. And they do mention that there was one of those drag story hours, and in California last weekend or 2 weeks ago, a group of men who are allegedly part of the Proud Boys disrupted a story time event given by drag queens at a library. So this is really, really heating up. And there are a lot of people very, very, very excited about this. I have not looked up these pictures of children sticking money into drag queens' undergarments.
Yeah, I don't know about
What
that. Yeah.
I want to ask you is, I don't think this is happening all that much. I don't think kids are being taken to actual like nighttime, bar time, sexy drag performances any more than parents are taking children out to strip clubs or bars or X-rated movies or anything like that. I think this is I think it's a bunch of lies, to be honest with you. The stuff I hear about for children is drag queen story hour, where a drag queen goes to a library and reads children's books to children. And I've
Well,
seen
and
pictures of these, and I'll even say like the drag queens are dressed in a way that they're fully covered. They're not wearing tiny, skimpy little outfits when they go to the libraries. And
yeah,
oh, go on. Sorry, I've been talking a lot.
so I will say about this in general. There has been and I don't know to the extent that um I don't know to what extent straight people or whatever. There has been a real, um, I think, particularly this year, the last few months, anyway, especially, there has been a real, um, I don't even want to say an uptick, just an explosion in uh, blatant, sort of scary
Mm-hmm.
homophobia. I mean, um, violent threats. Um, I was just, and I don't have this all prepared to talk about, but I was just reading earlier. Groups of librarian groups are trying to decide on how to deal with this because librarians are getting threatened because they have queer positive books on the shelves. That's not even outside of the story time kind of things. Even these are aren't even necessarily libraries that are doing anything like that. These are just
Sure.
libraries that have queer positive books on the shelf. Again, threats, violence, legislation in numerous states. I mean, more than just the usual suspects. Um, Pretty much every state has politicians who are at least trying to um, put forward laws to curtail queer rights, and
Mm-hmm.
particularly with trans kids, and trans adults for that matter. There's all sorts of stuff. So I don't know. I mean, you know, if if a if a if there's a parent out there who's taking I mean, if there's a kid who if there's a young teenager that's in a bar after hours at a drag show, there are already laws about that. If they're there with their parent, well, their parent sort of made that decision. I don't think that's a huge issue. And again, if it is, there are already laws about kids being in places that serve alcohol after hours. That's not,
Mm-hmm.
that's not you don't need to. The fact that we're singling out drag queens and the fact that we're getting back into this, um, what are you wearing? Are you wearing gender appropriate clothing? Um,
Right.
and,
Yeah.
and and really, I think this. I mean, I don't. It's not like homophobia started with J.K. Rowling, but I think J.K. Rowling sort of became once J.K. Rowling started with. I think it became sort of a ground zero for uh, normalizing sort of a new generation, a new vehement, ugly
Mm-hmm.
queer phobia. And I think with her, and you saw the progression that a lot of people have gone to. It started with trans issues and going after trans people, and then as with J.K. Rowling, everybody else seemed to do the same. It seemed to follow the same course with a lot of other people, where it started with trans. That was the sort of, I don't want to say canary in the coal mine, because that makes it sound like trans issues aren't important in and of themselves. They absolutely are. That was bad
Mm-hmm.
enough.
Mm-hmm.
That was more than bad enough. But that was sort of the gateway. That was sort of the gateway, and I think that's been a gateway for a lot of people. And I think J.K. Rowling was a gateway for a lot of people to say, like, oh, okay, this is okay. This kind of
Mm-hmm.
hate is okay. Um, and then you had queer people and allies who rallied with trans people, and then you had queer people and allies who said, that's their problem.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, then they came for me. So
Yeah.
this
I've
is all, I this is all, there are the usual homophobic suspects, but then there are also, and I don't want to put too much emphasis on this because this is a smaller part of the picture, but it's the part that makes me almost the most angry, is that there are queer people, particularly cis white queer people, who decided that trans issues were a separate thing,
mm-hmm.
and we're going to stay over here. And then, of course, again, not surprising to me in the least. Not that you should make your decisions based on are they going to come to get you eventually, but it, it just seems so obvious.
Yes.
J.K. Rowling started with trans issues, and then the piece she posted or liked about, well, we gave them gay marriage and now they want everything, and we should never have given them gay marriage. The condescending language of we gave them anything, combined with, oh, of course we gave them an inch. Now they want all the rights.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned that years ago. I
yeah.
remember us talking years ago about how you got to fight for everybody's rights or it's going to turn out nobody has them. And this rhetoric, the quotes that I was trying to do in a heightened way,
Mm-hmm.
but this weird hand-wringing hysteria about protecting our children from drag queens, really, like, it gives me a very bad feeling in the pit of my stomach, because I think it's lies, and I think it's deliberate, bad intentioned lies, and I think it's a disgusting false flag being flown here, because of course we want the children protected naturally. Like, that's a real low blow to go for. Nobody wants a child to be made uncomfortable or be made to experience something that's not appropriate for a child, right?
Yep.
But I don't think this is happening. NPR is always so good about linking to different sources and things.
Mm-hmm.
And when they mention how Vince Leach is saying that he's disturbed by the newspaper photos of kindergartners stuffing bills into panties at drag performances, there's no link.
Yeah.
If these pictures were readily available, I trust NPR enough to know that they would link them so that then I could go and see what he was so disgusted by. I don't believe it exists.
Well, and again, if there's a picture of that, and we know the context and it's weird and not good, um, you know, we if a bar lets in a kid after hours when they're not supposed to, we don't
It's a
shut
problem
down
for so many reasons.
we don't shut down all bars around the country. we don't um we don't call bartenders, we don't start calling bartenders groomers and consider them pedophiles. We say, oh, there's a problem with this bar did something, or this child's parents did something that they ought not do. So even if there even if there is an instance, again, I think you're right. I think this is almost 100%. This stuff is almost 100% made up. Um,
Yeah.
but if there are individual instances of that, again, there are laws about that. This whole It's brilliant though, right? It's brilliant because this whole groomer rhetoric that basically anyone gay is it ties in pedophilia. The
Mm-hmm.
old saw with queer people is like it's always there have always been efforts to tie it into pedophilia.
Yes.
Um and this is sort of taken off, I think, in it had some success in the past, but now I think it's really come along. And once you do that, once you make that link, then you can then suddenly everything is icky, everything's
Right.
unsettling, everything is dangerous to the children. We have to protect the children at all costs. Of course, the number one killer of children is now guns. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think most of the people who are worried about most of the people who are worried about children seeing a drag queen somewhere are not interested in doing a single thing about that other than possibly making guns more prevalent. So I
Right.
don't think anyone's ever died at a drag show. I mean, other than, like, I'm sure there have been some wild accidents, but
Yeah, I
it's not
mean,
a leading cause of death.
it's really not. I'm sure probably people actually have died at drag shows, but it wasn't child related.
Right.
Yeah, and I also, I've got to tell you, I don't think any of these representatives that I quoted actually care about the children.
Oh no.
I and I hate this. It's so insidious because you look like a monster when you start going like, no, it's fine if kids go to drag shows late at night and stay up way after their bedtimes and they're around drunk adults and they're seeing a lot of nudity. Like, No, but it's just not happening. And it's so hard. It's gaslighting. There we go. That's
Yep.
what it is. I'm being told all of these things are happening, and so many people are jumping on board with it. You start to almost believe it because everywhere you look, you read on the news, like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. I mean, personally, I thought that the drag shows were overrun with like straight women shrieking in their bachelorette party. Like, I thought that was the problem. And honestly, that is a problem. Let's try to be respectful, my cishet lady friends.
Yeah.
Um, but apparently now the bars are just overrun with tiny, like toddlers, kindergartners.
Well, and that's sort of a new angle, honestly. I mean, because it's I think that's a new twist to try to dig the knife in a little bit more. Because really it's been just the idea of, because this has been led up to with like the drag queen story hours, with the events for children, where again you see people, the idea that children are going to see someone in something that you don't consider gender appropriate clothing is going to be damaging them for life. That's where the start of this is. So the fact that if people are suddenly conjuring up, this is like the it's like the very hypothetical stories of all the trans people going into bathrooms and attacking everyone nonstop, which
Mm-hmm.
has probably happened, but no one can point to a single incidence. I mean, in the sense that everything has happened at some point somewhere.
Right.
Um,
People are horrible.
right.
And just because someone's queer doesn't mean that they're also a good person just because they're
Exactly.
queer.
But as a as a major problem to deal with, it's kind of made up. So you make up these hypothetical scenarios, and it's very effective.
It
It's
is.
extremely effective. If you come up with the right hypothetical scenario that everyone believes. I mean, the Ronald Reagan and the welfare queen, who was one woman who was basically a master con artist,
Yes.
like a super genius who had scammed all this money, who was like a one in many million type,
Yeah.
like
Like a mastermind
generational
criminal.
mastermind criminal. And suddenly it was, oh no, this is every black woman in America is
Yes.
doing this.
Absolutely.
That kind of thing. So, you come up with a hypothetical scenario, or you get one case, one instance, and
Yeah.
suddenly, and these personal responsibility Republicans, they seem awfully like into personal responsibility until someone's doing something they don't like, um, using birth control, or
Right.
taking their kids to a drag queen story hour. Oh, you should you should have your rights, and you should have take personal responsibility, unless you're putting your child in the presence of someone who's wearing something that I don't consider gender appropriate, which changes from generation to generation, and there's really no standard about that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's
even the pink and blue has swapped over time. I mean, pink used to be
right.
a very male color because it was more associated with blood, like, which is manly blood.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I, I I'm sputtering here because it just upsets me so much, because there are also, of course, even if these laws are never passed, even if there's not
they will
something
be.
put in place, you think parental
Some of them
rights will
already
be terminated?
some of them already have
If
been. I mean, there are already efforts to do that. I mean, um, the fact that we haven't hit doomsday on this yet, um, again, you've got people who there have already been cases where Child Protective Services is intervening. Have any children been taken from their parents yet? That I don't know. But there are definitely cases where parents are in the process of dealing with Child Protective Services, specifically because you might have exposed your children to something queer.
that is that's horrifying, because I know there's a lot of debate on whether you bring kids to Pride or not. But there are there are definitely parts of the Pride, like I'm thinking about the parade here in Rochester. There are a lot of families who just go out to all the parades.
Yeah.
It's just a parade. So you take your kids down to the Pride Parade, they see a float full of drag queens. All of a sudden, you've committed a felony, and your kids are taken into protective services. And it
Absolutely.
seems incredibly unreasonable. So, yeah, families might be ripped apart because of this. And then it's also very, very chilling that this rhetoric emboldens groups such as the Proud Boys to show up shouting things that are quoted in this article, but I believe I'm not even allowed to say on the radio,
Right.
at the drag queen going in to read a children's story to some kids. Because, that what were they planning to do? We can only assume they were planning on violence.
Yes. And it's, I mean, I hate to say this, it's a matter of time. With this fever pitch that this has reached, it's a matter of time, and I really hate to say that. I mean, there's violence against queer people every day, but in terms of something um, of truly headline grabbing violence, it is a matter of time because, again, we've conjured this image of queer people everywhere. Mistreating children. I'll put it mildly, but we've conjured this image, and there's no. And if you truly believe that, which the politicians do not,
No.
but a lot of the people they're talking to do. If you truly believed, that, you know, that there is, that there are sexual acts going on involving children, and no one was doing anything to stop it, you might feel that you had to take action if you truly believed that, if you were truly convinced of that. And again, people are truly convinced of this, that this idea is that, again, taking your child to drag queen story time, or, working with your doctor to provide trans affirming care for your teenager. There are people that truly believe that this is either tantamount to or a subset of child sex abuse. So I think people need to be aware and have their eyes open and be watchful, because I think we're entering, it's not like we've never not been in a dangerous time for queer people, but we are entering a particularly dangerous time for queer people where the law is no longer on. The law was not on our side, and then the law was on our side for a while. And now the law is not on our side again. And the difference is, when the law was not on our side in the past, everything was very quiet and secretive and nobody talked about anything. So you didn't necessarily know. You could go through your life not even knowing that queer people existed. So it was nothing to get too mad about, because it was mostly something that people just didn't want to talk about. Now now everyone knows that there are queer people, and there are queer people everywhere, and that has become and that has become the new boogeyman, the new source of fear. So people are no longer queer. I'm not saying it was good when everyone was in the closet and nobody talked about it, but there was also a protection there. There was also a little bit of a shielding there that doesn't exist anymore. And again, it's mostly good that it doesn't exist, but it's also, it removes a little bit of I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's infuriating, and it's ignorant, and it's scary.
It is. And I should mention, in this article, there are a couple of people who make a lot more sense to me quoted. There's DeSantis's gubernatorial rival, Democrat Nikki Fried, said that she supports drag shows, and she's quoted as saying, if a parent wants to take their kids to a drag show, that's on the parents. And it's entertainment. The kids are not turning gay because they went to a drag show. And Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel reported that reportedly described complaints about children exposed to drag queens as fake issues that are dividing people, which is exactly what we've been talking about here. So, and she's also quoted as saying, drag queens make everything better. Drag queens are fun. So,
Absolutely.
thank goodness there is more of, well, not more, but there's at least some of that, to me, much more well-tempered rhetoric of this is entertainment, these are entertainers.
Yeah.
What? And
Well,
of
and
course,
I
sometimes things get real raunchy, but again, that's, late night at the bar. If you're a parent and you somehow got your kindergartner out late night at a bar, like, it's not the drag
whatever the
queen's fault.
whatever the
Like,
bar is. I mean, whatever the bar is,
I know what bar
Um,
is letting those kids in.
well, and it's it's like the thing that's been said many times. Like when I was growing up, my entertainment was 100% straight.
Yes.
100, pretty much 100%. Maybe 99.9% if you include the like, oh, the bisexual serial killer, or those sort of tropes that would occasionally pop up in the, like, um, and still is just as gay as you can possibly imagine. I mean, it's
Yep.
really like, so, the idea that anything is making anybody be anything they wouldn't. Plus, I mean, who cares? Being gay is fine. Even if even if
Yeah.
something did make you gay, it's fine. It's not really it's not as bad. It's not bad like
Right.
you think it is. It's just totally fine.
It's not bad at all. Nope.
Except for jerks, things I can't
Yeah.
names that I can't say on the radio that I'll,
Right.
except for jerks who who are willing to endanger people just to score a few political points. I mean, it's wild. So, but and this is one of those things, like, I know that people are disenchanted with the electoral process, and I know, when people tell you to vote, you're like, why? What has it done for me? But there is still damage yet to be done, and there are still things that supporting more reasonable politicians can help to mitigate. So, think about, again, as always, when you're thinking about whether or not to vote or who you're going to vote for, think about the most vulnerable people in your life, and think about if you're helping them by not showing up, or by, not making an informed vote. It's because there is still, because some of these politicians are wild.
They really are.
They're
They're
wild.
Yeah, they're wild, they're telling lies, they're not afraid to say that there is just an alternate reality out there.
Yeah, and the
And then
rabble
make
that they the,
that's the thing.
the rabble that they've roused will show up to vote.
Right.
So,
And whether, like you were saying, some people will legitimately believe this alternate reality that's being posited. I think also a lot of people will just use it to defend their bad actions.
absolutely.
Like, quite a
Absolutely.
few people are absolutely smart enough to go like, oh yeah, I don't believe that's happening for 1 second, but now I have an excuse to be a
Yeah.
real jerk. Now I have an excuse to be violent.
The entire Texas Republican Party, in their platform, just today, made a plank of their platform that gay, I forget what the wording was, queer, gay, I'm sure they said gay, or LGBTQ, is an aberrant, abnormal, illegitimate lifestyle, and that is going to be a goal of their platform to do what, I don't know, but you know. We don't want to get into too specifics. We're just going to say it's gross and we don't like it, and we're going to do. But I mean, this is the kind of thing that we need to be aware of come election time. And again, there are a lot of reasons to be disenchanted with our electoral process, but there are also a lot of reasons to stand up in some way and fight for the vulnerable people in our lives.
Yeah, wow, I had not heard that news. And now, as happens many times, more and more over the recent years, on this very program, where I feel like I can't breathe.
Hmm.
Just
In this case, the vulnerable person in your life might be Heather, who can't breathe.
I mean,
So it's
just the sheer and utter panic weighing down on my chest
yeah.
at the thought of that. But you know what, Space Cadets? Do you know what you don't have to panic about?
What is the? Tell us the good news, Heather.
The good news is we're going to stop talking.
Oh, yay.
But more awesome things are coming up right here on WAYO LP Rochester. So stay tuned and check back in with us next week when we will be, I'm sure, presenting other terrifying, terrifying things right here on The Sound of Tomorrow. So, when I had perfected the final touches for Mound, I had a photographer friend come over and take some glamour shots.
I don't. Oh my. Oh wow. Okay. These are.
Right?
I was going to say these are disturbing.
That's exactly what Mound and I were going for.
Oh, okay, then well done. You nailed it. But there is no way, zero chance we're using Mound for our mascot.
We most certainly are, Ross.
The Sound of Tomorrow is a family show, Heather.
Well, then maybe you better put on some pants, buddy.
Whatever. I'm not gonna do that. You're not my mom. Or
Pants.
or are you?
I might be.
What if you are?
Son!
Mama?
My baby.
Oh.